A belongs to U. A belongs to U minus U, that is fine, but since U minus U is a subset of U, so A after all belongs to U also. So in any case, whether B is V or not, we have found an element in U. In this case, that element is small u. In that case, that element is small a, whose f star image is B. You see, B is equal to U f star, B is equal to A f star. So this tells us that f star is onto. Hence, f star is onto. Now next we show that f star is 1 to 1. Next, let us take C and D. C and D be two elements in U such that Cf star is equal to Df star. We have to prove that C is equal to D. Okay, now some cases arise. One case is that neither C nor D, because you see C and D are elements in U, so there is a possibility that one of them may be equal to small u. It's an element in U. Now our first case is that neither of them is an element, is equal to U. If C and D both belong to U minus U, that is none of them is equal to small u, then Cf star equal to Df star implies what happens when elements are in U minus U, their f star images are equal to their f images. Cf is equal to Df. Since f is 1 to 1, we then have C is equal to D. Okay, so one part is over. There is another case. If C is equal to U and D is not equal to U, or in other words, let us just write it like this. This will be more clear. C is U but D is not U. Then what do we get? Then Cf star equal to Df star implies if C is U, then where is it? Here. Then its f star image is nothing but V. So Cf star is V, and Df star, because now D belongs to U minus U, so Df star is here, Df. But then V is equal to Df belongs to V minus V. Why does Df belong to V minus V? Because f is a function that maps into V minus V. So whatever element you choose from this set, in this case it is D, its image will lie in V minus V. But we are getting here that V belongs to V minus V, which is clearly not true. A contradiction. So this case does not arise. If this is the case, then we will not have Cf star equal to Df star. Similarly, we cannot have C belonging to U minus U and D is equal to U. That will also produce a similar contradiction. So that case also does not arise. And there is only one more case where both C and D are equal to U. But then we automatically have that C and D are equal. The only other possibility is C equal to U, which is also equal to D. So in any case, Cf star equal to Df star implies C is equal to D. Hence, F star is 1 to 1. Okay, so we have successfully proved that our F star that we have obtained by extending F is also a 1-to-1 correspondence, just like F, but it is a 1-to-1 correspondence between which sets? U and V. So, and let us just write that F star is a 1-to-1 correspondence between U and V. Now, since F star is coming from F, what was F? F was a 1-to-1 correspondence between this and this. And how many such 1-to-1 correspondences we had? From the induction hypothesis, we obtained that the number of such 1-to-1 correspondences is n factorial. So they will generate the same number of 1-to-1 correspondences F star between U and V. Thus, we have obtained n factorial 1-to-1 correspondences between U and V. In brackets you write arising as extensions of 1-to-1 correspondences between U minus U and V minus V. Okay, but these n factorial 1-to-1 correspondences between U and V may not be all. There may be more. We don't know. These have arisen from such functions, but there may be more. Okay, now note that the elements U and V we chose from capital U and capital V respectively arbitrarily. So we could have chosen any element u from u, we could have also chosen any element v from v. How would that affect this whole situation? Let us, to make matters simple, we fix u and vary v. Fixing u belonging to u and varying v belonging to v. How many possibilities for v are there? In capital V, there are n plus 1 elements. So there are n plus 1 possibilities for small v. Small v can be any one of those n plus 1 elements, and each such choice would give me n factorial one-to-one correspondences between u and v. New one-to-one correspondences, because you see, since everything is happening in this case, whatever we have done here, since everything happens depending on u and small v, small u and small v. So if I change small v, for one value of v, I have n factorial one-to-one correspondences, which are extensions of mappings, which are like this. For another v, I will have another n factorial one-to-one correspondences. For n plus 1 such v's, I will have n plus 1 times n factorial such one-to-one correspondences. So that's why fixing u and varying v, we get n factorial times n plus 1, which is nothing but n plus 1 factorial one-to-one correspondences between u and v. Note that we have already reached the number that we need, n plus 1 factorial, but can there be more? If there is more, then our induction fails. We have to now make sure that whatever functions we have obtained here, namely this many, are actually all the one-to-one correspondences. So for that we argue like this. Since every one-to-one correspondence from or between u and v maps small u to some element v belonging to v, all such correspondences have already been accounted for above. What is the meaning of this? We have n plus 1 factorial one-to-one correspondences which map many elements to many elements, but in particular which map u to v. Now keep in mind that we fixed u, but we varied V over the entire set V. Now if I, forgetting these things, whatever we got here, if I arbitrarily choose a one-to-one correspondence from U to V, the element U after all is here in U. So this element will have some image under this correspondence. That image, since it is after all an element in V, so it has already been considered here. Where? Namely in that argument where you have considered mappings or one-to-one correspondences between, suppose this one-to-one correspondence that you here you have taken is sigma. I have to make sure that sigma has already been counted here. What do? You run the argument that we have run before with these two sets. With this value of V. Because then you see, if I extend this function like how we extended such functions to f star. Now what is f star? F star is actually sigma. So that means what I'm trying to say here is that on U minus O, sorry, this is U. On U minus U, F and sigma are identical. That is, if I take an element A in U minus U, then I have A sigma is equal to A F. And since F maps U to V and V is nothing but U sigma, so F and sigma are identical on U also, because you see, what is UF? Oh, I cannot say UF, sorry. What is U sigma? U sigma is just this V. So that means U sigma is equal to UF star. Do you realize what I am saying? Sigma will arise from some such one-to-one correspondence between these two sets as an extension of such a function. So sigma has already been accounted for here. So this tells us that whatever functions we have counted, they are the only functions. I hope I was able to get my message across. If you are not getting this part of the argument, then what you do is that you take some particular U, some particular V having only small number of elements and run the arguments by fixing arbitrarily some U and some different choices of V. In particular, what you do this. You take, suppose U is equal to 1, 2 and you take V is equal to also 2 elements, say 3, 4. Okay, you try to do this. You actually find out all the functions from U to V which are one-to-one correspondences, that is, which are one-to-one and onto. Okay, then suppose my U is 1 and I have 2 values for V. Now you from among those one-to-one correspondences that you have chosen, you choose any one arbitrarily, say sigma, from U to V. Then you try to see what F, which is a function from 1 to something here, this is the question mark, qualifies as that function whose extension is sigma according to our argument. If you are able to do this, then you will understand this general thing. Okay, it's not very difficult, it only seems difficult in this general form. You try to think about it for some time, you will get it, I am sure. And if you don't, then comment in the comment section, you write a comment that you have not understood it, then I will actually carry out the example for you. So this completes the induction. And proves the result. It has actually proved something more general, but you can understand, you take with S and T we started, no? So if S is equal to T, you get what is asked in the actual exercise.